Hi, my name is Kieran Blanks, and I'm the co-founder and chief growth officer at OHub. We are a technology, startup, and venture ecosystem building platform that's been created to ensure that everyone, everywhere has equitable access to opportunities in the fourth industrial revolution. This is a really exciting conversation for me, something I'm deeply passionate about, and so I'm more than thrilled to be on to share my thoughts on this matter. Now, follow me. I want you to imagine that you've been challenged to a race, but in this race, there's one condition. You have been forced to add 100-pound concrete blocks to your ankles. Now, while you're weighed down by this extra baggage, the other runners in this race get a chance to run free of any obstruction and free of any impediments to them maximizing their fullest potential and speed on this track. In this scenario, it's quite clear. You're at a disadvantage compared to your competition before the starting gun even is fired. Now, a race of this nature sounds outlandish and absurd and just simply put, unfair. But in fact, it's a race with these very similar conditions that Black and brown communities have been challenged to race in for centuries. Not only have they been unfairly weighed down by social, economic, and political plights, but the environments where these races, these competitions took place were filled with even more insurmountable hills to get ahead. Historically, these concrete blocks and insurmountable hills mentioned have come in the form of institutionalized racism, mass incarceration, most recently police injustice, job denial, redlining, and in some cases, they have simply been the collateral consequences of being born into poverty, thus making the possibility of upward mobility feel almost impossible. With the advancements in the fourth industrial revolution like robotics and artificial intelligence gradually replacing humans with machines, this race is becoming even more complicated and complex with striking implications for spikes in unemployment and increased demand for skilled talent like engineers and robotics technicians in the marketplace. Roles that many people in these communities have not had the access, exposure, or socialization to even properly prepare for. Now, as Newton's law told us, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So what are the consequences of this exponential acceleration, if you will? Who will win? Who will lose in this game? McKinsey and Company, in fact, predicted 4.5 million jobs occupied by Black Americans becoming obsolete due to acceleration and the adoption of automation tools across industries. Now, this is coupled with the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 on Black Americans that has brought to the forefront social, economic, and health disparities that can simply no longer go ignored. Starting with answering one big question, and that is, what can we learn from the first three revolutions that can help us to better prepare for this fourth? So let's use the first revolution as an example. Beginning in 1760, industrialization transformed societies from agrarian, agriculture-based economies to ones based primarily on new steam and electricity-powered manufacturing machines. So once skilled laborers soon found themselves at the mercy of machines, scrambling for work and trying to figure out how to play catch up in this new space. This was the beginning of a new kind of economy. It's a great time, a historic wealth building event to say the least. More specifically, I would describe this as a zero-sum game where the prosperity of many and the white population, American and European alike, relied on the exploitation of low-skilled laborers and slave labor. This exploitation left many people of color out of this historic wealth-building event. And this is important because this revolution, in my mind, really laid the foundation for the racial wealth gap that still exists between Black and white Americans today, where typical or the average Black family has just 1/10 of the wealth of a typical white one. So working with this historic context, I believe that we are adequately equipped to not repeat history as we understand it, and for once guarantee that Black, Latinx, Indigenous people of color, Asian, Middle Eastern have a fighting chance at building generational wealth at a rate of our white counterparts. So this leads me to the second part of my question, and that is, how are we preparing ourselves for the fourth? Or maybe a better question is, how can we prepare ourselves? Let me say that, there's no mistake that technology is a part of our lives now and forward. And now is a time more than ever to operate with empathy, cooperation, and collaboration and bring everyone to the table. When I think about innovation and breakthroughs, I can't help but think about the importance rather of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think that technology and its ecosystem, in fact, has the power to pull these systematic inequities mentioned earlier up by the roots across all areas of modern life. And so, we need people with a variety of backgrounds, experiences, to have their ideas, lived experiences, cultural narratives, and needs considered as these new tools, technologies, mindsets, philosophies are being developed. And so, think about this like a dinner party. We need to make reasonable efforts and accommodations to ensure that the needs and preferences of all the party goers in this fourth industrial revolution are taken into account. This in turn will ensure that these new exponential tools and technology I mentioned, really leverage and reflect the rich diversity of our planet and all the people that occupy it. Today, however, it's in its infancy, and I think that we are quite a ways from the finish lines. Now, an HR&A advisor's report recently revealed that if the tech workforce were to accurately mirror the U.S. workforce, then we are 1.1 million Black and Latinx Americans shy of that today. The same report uncovered an $8,000 earning income gap between Black and Latinx workers in the U.S. tech ecosystem and their non-Black and Latinx counterparts. The result of these disparities is a startling $46 billion racial income gap. We have to solve this, and we have to solve this together. And so I did some thinking through this, and I think that to really tackle this, let's start by intentionally taking and establishing innovation, co-working spaces, and entrepreneurial-centered ecosystems in areas most proximate to this communities that we're looking to serve, Black and Latinx. I think that this will kickstart the migration of minorities from the consumption side of technology to the production and the workforce sides. This in turn empower these communities to accrue the economic gains that this historic wealth-building event has to offer. Thus, slowly, gradually, or maybe even exponentially, closing that $46 billion racial income gap I mentioned earlier. Now, Brookings Institute senior fellows Rodney Sampson and Dale Gines would agree with that solution and have argued that the U.S. can achieve this economic equity by focusing on three key areas. The first being talent development centered on equipping these people of color with in-demand skills and tech. The second, building an entrepreneurship ecosystem anchored by venture and startup resources and strategies to support the establishment or the transition from these Black and brown persons into the entrepreneurial space to transform their communities in accordance. And lastly, investing in minority-owned startups. This access to capital and scaling potential would yield long-lasting and significant returns for all impact players. And more importantly, it would get those founders of colors on the pathways of multi-generational wealth building that many so desperately need. It's my thought that we really can't afford to have another generation of students or adults preparing for a world and jobs that simply don't exist anymore, or for our academics and to continue isolating engineering and tech-oriented content from core curriculum across disciplines. For example, I believe that if we can intertwine affordable alternative programs like rapid reskilling, boot camps into broader K-12 and college and university offerings, we can provide these communities with the necessary training, exposure, and socialization with tech that they need to fully thrive during this fourth industrial revolution. This is an idea that I'm actually putting into practice as I'm executing with the help of some corporate partners and some universities that have stepped forward to say that we want to transform the world around us. And I invite anyone who sees fit to join me in this what we're calling an OHUB, the Campus Ecosystem Development Initiative, to ensure that students, faculty, and surrounding communities have the resources and exposure necessary to build a strong future in this new economy. just in closing, I believe that tech is poised to be the great equalizer and democratizer in our world. But without the proper social architecture and plans for resource deployment, many already vulnerable communities will be more at risk of an irreversible, debilitating state of poverty and displacement. And in order to help these communities, we need to build stronger and more available access points into these job and wealth building opportunities. So what's your stake in the fourth industrial revolution? And what are you prepared to do today to ensure that all people that occupy this planet are included and are not left out of the new world? If you're interested in continuing this conversation and joining the work that I am doing to help move the needle on these efforts, please don't hesitate to reach out. I want to thank you again for having me, and I look forward to learning and hearing from everyone else in this community. Thank you.